In a world, welcome to Relatively Speaking, episode 3. We had to restart. It happens. I don't know what's going on. I can't figure out anything it would be on my end. What are you going to do? We are doing it again. Quick recap of what we covered last week for a second so everyone understands. And then we're going to further bury the current heliocentric model. Shout out to all the legends that came back. I changed it to where the Rokfin stream will be up because I keep forgetting to show them some love. So you can, of course, go to Rokfin as well. And any super chat over $20 will pop up on the screen and be read by this robot girl, as people have begged me to bring that back because it was accidentally on one time. It was pretty hilarious. And you can go to Witsit.Dlive and it'll read your chat off during the stream. And PayPal will not take a ton of it. All right, cool. Let's get right into the presentation. How Einstein's flip-flop buried the heliocentric model. Here's a quote, of course, from Einstein talking about when he was in his student years, he came across Michelson's experiment, and that if it was to take the experiment's observation to be true, that led him to have to come up with a special theory of relativity. And since then, I have come to believe that the motion of the Earth cannot be detected by any optical experiment, though the Earth is revolving around the sun. Apologists will say he's just talking about Michelson-Morley, although he clearly says any optical experiment. You could say Michelson-Morley type experiment. Okay. Well, we have this quote from 1920. To the question whether or not the motion of the Earth in space can be made perceptible in terrestrial experiments. We've already remarked in section 5 that all attempts of this nature led to a negative result. Before the theory of relativity was put forward, it was difficult to become reconciled to this negative result, of course, meaning that his theory of relativity helped reconcile the fact that every attempt via terrestrial or earthly experiment to detect the motion of the Earth around the sun was negative. Relativity helped to reconcile that fact. Albert Einstein, Relativity, the Special and General Theory, 1920, page 61. We'll be covering that in just a moment. Here we have another quote from Einstein. The struggle so violent in the early days of science between the views of Ptolemy and Copernicus would then be quite meaningless. Either coordinate system could be used with equal justification. The two sentences, the sun is at rest and the earth moves, or the sun moves and the earth is at rest, would simply mean two different conventions concerning two different coordinate systems. Albert Einstein, The Evolution of Physics, From Early Concepts to Relativity and Quanta, page 224, 1938. So this is, of course, 33 years after special relativity. And as I just mentioned in the previous stream, of course, the actual name of the theory that is often called special theory of relativity or special relativity, the paper is titled On the Electrodynamics of Moving Bodies. That's from June 30th, 1905. And then in 1915, he proposed general relativity. This to show you that he himself says the geocentric stationary Earth is equally valid, equally viable, and that no optical or terrestrial experiment can actually detect that the Earth is revolving around the sun, although he believes that it is. All right. Here is Ronald Clark in the Einstein, The Life and Times. The problem now faced science was considerable, which is talking about the Michelson-Morley experiment, for there seemed to be only three alternatives. The first was that the Earth was standing still, which meant scuttling or getting rid of the whole Copernican theory and was unthinkable. Of course, in science, reality or evidence should never be considered unthinkable. That's a religion. But anyway, you're not really ever told that, just like when I was having the conversation with Professor Parks in the field, I had to correct him and say, actually, the Earth being stationary was an obvious answer to the observation. I'm not completely through with it, but I just wanted to say that discussion with that professor was great. So glad y'all actually discussed the topics instead of the way it normally goes. Yeah, absolutely. It was cool. All right, here is Steven Weinbergen to explain the world. If we were to adopt a frame of reference like Tycho Brahe, of course, being the one that proposed the geocentric model, kinematically, meaning geometrically, specifically kinematics means how bodies move in relation to one another, as in I move around the pole, right? It's how bodies move in relation to one another. That's called kinematics, and it's geometric. It's not dynamic, which is what causes these objects to move around each other. What's the dynamic relationship? What's the force? Okay. If we were to adopt a frame of reference like Tycho's in which the Earth is at rest, then the distant galaxies would seem to be executing circular turns once a year. Well, if the Earth was geocentric, then the galaxies would be executing a circular turn once a year. It's almost like the sky is a clock and it's cyclical or something. No, that's crazy. And in general relativity, this enormous motion would create forces akin to gravitation. So if the Earth were stationary and in the center, the distant galaxies would be completing a circular motion once a year. And that would generate an enormous motion, or that motion specifically would create forces akin to gravitation. So if these distant galaxies are completing a circular turn every year, as they would be if the Earth is in the center and stationary, then that enormous motion would create forces akin to gravitation according to general relativity. We're covering this, of course, because general relativity is the current theory of gravity for the current model of the Earth, which is that it is a tilted, wobbling, spinning, revolving ball flying through a vacuum and it orbits the sun in a heliocentric model. General relativity states that if in fact the Earth were stationary, this immense motion coming from the distant galaxies rotating would actually create a force akin to gravitation, which would act on the sun and the planets and give them the motions of the Tychonic theory. Newton seems to have had a hint of this in an unpublished Proposition 43 that did not make it to the Principia. Newton acknowledged that Tycho's theory could be true if some other force besides ordinary gravitation acted on the sun and planets. Of course, they say, well, the sun's just so massive, then the Earth would have to revolve around it. Now, of course, many of us are not going to make unfounded claims as to the size, the mass, the density, the distance of the sun, what medium it's in. We know that's unfounded pseudoscientific assumptions that consistently implode in on themselves. Nevertheless, the idea is the sun is so big, therefore that gravity would cause the Earth to go around it, and there's no other way. But actually, according to both Newtonian mechanics and Einsteinian mechanics, which is the current model's only two real popular proposed theories for gravity that have ever been accepted, across the board, right? According to those, if the entire universe is moving, it would actually create forces on the Earth akin to a gravitational type of force. Specifically, you could use Lorentz magnetic force. It'd be seemingly electromagnetic in nature. And we'll get a little bit more into that in just a second, but I just want everyone to understand, no matter what an apologist tells you, this is just a fact, okay? According to relativity and Newton, the Earth being stationary, you would have a force because the entire quote-unquote universe, the cosmos, will be moving around it. With that angular momentum, it would translate a force onto the Earth. And Newton only applied it to the solar system. Newton's like, oh, the sun is the center of the whole universe, and we go around it. And he said that space was fixed, absolute, meaning it's not changing. It's just there. It's unchangeable. It's absolute. And that we fly through it around the sun. Now, if he had accounted for the rest of the whole entire cosmos moving around the Earth, this would have changed everything if it wasn't absolute space. This is all just objective within the framework of Newton and Einstein. So anyway, he's explaining right here that according to Einstein, general relativity, there would be forces akin to gravity, gravitation, because gravitas means weight. Gravitation and gravity are not the same thing, but anyway. This enormous motion from the distant galaxies completing and executing a circular turn once a year would create a force onto the Earth, onto the sun and the planets, and give them motions like the tectonic theory around the Earth. Now, Newton seemed to have a hint of this, and he said this in something that did not make it to the finest publication. Somehow it didn't make it to his publisher conveniently enough, but here is Proposition 43 in Newton's handwriting himself. And here's what it says. In order for the Earth to be at rest in the center of the system of the sun, planets, and comets, there's required both universal gravity and another force in addition that acts on all bodies equally according to the quantity of matter in each of them, and is equal and opposite, keep that in mind, to the accelerative gravity with which the Earth tends to the sun. And thus celestial bodies can move around the Earth at rest, as in the tectonic system. If there was another real actual force, then the Earth could be at rest. This is physicist Isaac Newton. He's actually a philosopher, natural philosopher. Principia, Proposition 43, Theorem 22, didn't make the final publication. We also covered molar and the theory of relativity. This is an important distinction to understand. As people tried to say that Newton and Einstein are the same, Einstein basically boils down to Newtonian equations, and that there is some type of equivalence, but they are fundamentally different and contradictory. They are 100% not the same at all. It was just this reason that Newton introduced the concept of absolute space, absolute meaning fixed, which should represent the system of reference where the laws of nature assume the simplest and most natural form. However, as mentioned at the beginning of Chapter 2, the notion of absolute space lost its physical meaning as soon as the special principle of relativity was generally accepted, for as a consequence of this principle, it became impossible by any experiment to decide which system of inertia, meaning unchanging, not being acted upon by an outside force, which system of inertia had to be regarded as the absolute system. Therefore, Einstein advocated a new interpretation of the fictitious forces in accelerated systems of reference. Instead of regarding them as an expression of a difference in principle between the fundamental equations and uniformly moving and accelerated systems, he considered both kinds of systems of reference to be completely equivalent as regards the form of the fundamental equations, and the fictitious forces were treated as real forces on the same footing as any other force of nature. Also to say, okay, just so I got you, don't. What he's saying is, Einstein had to use this set of inertial forces, call them fictitious because they could not be actual, because he had absolute fixed space, so there couldn't be a real reciprocation, equal and opposite reaction, inertial forces. But he needed the inertial forces for his math and for his theory. So he called them fictitious. He proposed this idea that they're there, but it's like they're not there, and we can use it to make our math work and our theory work, but they're fictitious. They're illusory, effectively. They're not real, but we can treat them as if they are real. This is the guy everyone props up as being some genius who proved heliocentrism, mind you. He couldn't make his model work. People were like, he's such a genius that by 23 he came up with calculus and gravity, the dynamic theory to explain heliocentric model definitively. In reality, he couldn't make his model work. He had to then impose inertial forces into his system, but call them fictitious. And the fictitious forces were treated as real forces on the same footing as any other force of nature. The reason for the occurrence in accelerated systems of reference of such peculiar forces should, according to this new idea, be sought in the circumstance that the distant masses of the fixed stars are accelerated relative to these systems of reference. The fictitious forces are thus treated as a kind of gravitational force, the acceleration of the distant masses causing a field of gravitation in the system of reference considered. Now, in reality, everything's intrinsically electromagnetic, and as we get further along in the series, we'll start actually getting into viable explanations of what's going on. But they hijacked the electromagnetic relationships and the electric relationship and the electrostatic relationship of objects relative to their mass, meaning how electrostatic are they, and call it a gravitation specifically. Nevertheless, remember that right here he says that you need there's required both universal gravity and another force in addition that acts on all bodies equally according to the quantity of matter in each of them and is equal and opposite to the accelerative gravity with which the Earth tends to the sun. Okay. Well, here you go, right? According to him, he replaced these real inertial forces with fictitious forces. That's because he said space was absolute, that it was fixed. Okay, so he couldn't have the reciprocation, the inertial forces. Now, if you actually take the distant stars to move around, you get these real sets of forces, according to his own system. I'm trying to make sure this is really clear. Okay, here we also covered last week relational mechanics. Andre Assis. He born in 1962, 1999. He released his paper Relational Mechanics, breaking down all the math, explaining basically what I just explained to you in more detail. And we covered a couple of the quotes, a couple of the pages here. He says these two numerical calculations show that general relativity does not yield the measured values of these quantities in the Earth's frame of reference. He's actually looking at the pendulum, how much it's supposed to precess relative to latitude. He then applies general relativity and says, if you see here, actually general relativity doesn't even accurately yield the right results. The analysis shows clearly that in general relativity, kinematically equivalent situations are not dynamically equivalent, meaning he's showing that when you use general relativity and you use Newtonian mechanics and you apply it to the same system kinematically, meaning the Earth and things moving in relation to it, you get a dynamically different result. Again, dynamic being the force, the relationship, the dynamic relationship between the two bodies that causes the motion. Kinematic being just how they move, what the motion is. This is showing that it's a misnomer, and in fact, in general relativity, kinematically equivalent situations are not necessarily dynamically equivalent. Here we have defined this equation to let the Coriolis term become similar to Lorentz's magnetic force. It might be called the gravitational magnetic field generated by the rotation of the set of distant galaxies. Now, this sounds to be inching a little bit into reality, don't you think? Now, of course, we know the Earth being stationary, there is something causing the motion of the stuff in the sky. Regardless of what you think the Earth is, the stuff in the sky is moving perpetually in a cycle, central to us. Okay, so I thought that was interesting. And then he points out here the flattened figure of the Earth, or Foucault's pendulum, can no longer be utilized as proofs of the Earth's real rotation. In relational mechanics, both facts can be equally explained with the frame of distant galaxies at rest exerting a gravitational force on bodies at the Earth's surface while the Earth rotates relative to this frame, or with the Earth at rest while the distant galaxies rotate around it exerting a gravitational force on bodies at the Earth's surface. Now he's talking about basically a gravomagnetic force. Gravitomagnetic. Both explanations are equally correct and yield the same effects. It then becomes a matter of convenience or of convention to choose the Earth, the distant galaxies, or any other body or frame of reference to be considered at rest. This is an important and deep acknowledgement. Dr. Luka Popov, the Newtonian Machian analysis of the Neo-Tychonian model of planetary motions. In his conclusion, he explains there's another interesting remark that follows from this analysis, this being the Newtonian Machian, of course, the Machian principle being that distant things in the universe would translate motion and force to the Earth that's at rest. If he corrected Einstein saying, you didn't actually apply this to all the stuff way out there. You don't seem to understand your own theory. And Einstein admitted that he was right and that he was falsely ridiculed. If one could put the whole universe in accelerated motion around the Earth, angular momentum, the pseudo-potential corresponding to pseudo-force, we call them pseudo in this paper, he explains, for convenience purposes. They are actual, though. But they are typically referred to as pseudo-potential and pseudo-force. So he calls that for convenience, but they would be actual. They will be immediately generated. The same pseudo-potential then causes the universe to stay in that very state of motion without any need for exterior forces acting upon it, meaning the place that we live is in the center and everything moving around us. The system was created in such a way that it's perpetual. It is perpetual. The relationship between the center of the universe, or the cosmos, and the angular momentum radially outward combined with the Coriolis creates a perpetual angular momentum, which is actually very mind-blowing. The fine-tuning that went into the orchestration that is the cosmos. Now here's the components of acceleration. You have the Coriolis, the centrifugal, and the Euler forces. And if you look here, you will see that the Coriolis is twice as strong as the centrifugal force. What that means is that, of course, centrifugal, you have the whole cosmos moving around the Earth in the center. So you're going to have a force that's pushing outward, like you're on a merry-go-round. You're spinning a basketball. The water's going to come off the basketball. Take a tennis ball, dip it in water, spin it. The water is going to spin off of it outward. The centrifugal force, right? Now that's going to be pushing outward. At the same time, this angular momentum is going to generate a Coriolis force, but not the way it's been bastardized, where it's fictitious and it's all because the Earth is spinning. You just can't tell in any way. No. This is just an actual real force. The Coriolis force is a real thing, just not the way that the current model claims it. Everything has to be pseudo and fictitious to even make the math work. Anyway, the point here is that you see Coriolis is twice as strong. Therefore, you're going to have a net centripetal force. Coriolis is actually radiating inward. Centrifugal is going outward. So if the force coming inward from the angular momentum of the universe moving around the Earth is twice as strong, then you're going to have a net force coming in. And that's going to be centripetal. It's going to be a radially inward accelerative centripetal force. Okay. Now, if you look here, this is pretty interesting. Now, within the current paradigm, right? Let's pretend that this little green dot here is the ISS. And it's going around this black circle, which would be the Earth. This is what they say, right? Well, of course, in reality, in actual physics, as something spins around something in the center, it creates a centrifugal force. It pushes outward. Okay? Now, what they try to claim is that the centrifugal force and the gravitational force cancel out just perfectly, and that's how you attain orbit. The way that they find the sweet spot is they get this gravitational force to balance out with the centrifugal force, and that's how you maintain orbit. But there's a little problem here. For one, it's going to create the velocity, the tendency to go out away from an orbit. Secondly, you see there's actually two gravitational arrows. Is this real? No, this is the heliocentric model. Of course it's not real. And I know that this is a lie, but I'm just showing you there is no rebuttal to this. This is the death of the heliocentric model. Okay, so moreover, F and F equals ma. Of course, F equals ma is force equals mass time acceleration. All right. F equals ma is the sum of all forces on an object, the F. Okay, now in this textbook, Classical Mechanics, referring to F equals ma, John Taylor writes, where as usual, F denotes the sum of all forces as identified in any inertial frame. So in the quote-unquote ISS orbiting Earth scenario, now we'll get into what the ISS really is, maybe even Wednesday. F equals ma must be extended by adding a term to the left side representing the centrifugal force. The math establishing the weightlessness of the orbiting crew is then, of course, the idea is that people are floating in the ISS, and so what causes that? Their model doesn't work. They claim they use Newtonian mechanics to establish orbit, and that they can use Newtonian mechanics for all the different orbits on the local scale. This is incorrect. It shows that people don't understand what they're talking about. Okay? Now, if you look closely here, can you see my mouse? I don't think you can see my mouse. If you look closely at the top equation here, it's F plus FCF. They have to account for the centrifugal force. So again, right here, F equals ma must be extended by adding a term to the left side representing the centrifugal force. So they claim it's fictitious, but they have to account for it. They have to. Which shows you that even in their own paradigm, everything they're claiming is wrong. Their math doesn't even work. Their physics is a joke. Okay, moving on. So Newtonian mechanics, once again, does not work without adding these forces. Here you have F equals ma, again, Newtonian mechanics, only yields about 1/10 the value required. This is when they looked out. This is from Vera Rubin, 1955, I believe it is, looking at the galaxy spirals, their rotation. Simply put, the galaxies are rotating way too fast for the heliocentric model. And it doesn't work with Newtonian mechanics. For one, just the equation F equals ma doesn't work at all, right? And then this has drastic effects on their model here. As shown in the image above, the top line is the velocities that are measured within the galaxy. See the top line there. You can see that they're faster, their faster movement as they move away from the bright central part of the galaxy. The line below is the expected velocity, as you can see in the above figure. As the hypothetical star moves away from the center of the galaxy, as per the calculations, expected to move slowly, but that is not the case. Simply put, what they expected is that as it gets further away from the center, it's going to slow down. But in reality, what they see is that it's going faster and faster out from the center. There is something that has a mass, but it's not visible. Newton's law predicts as the object starts moving away from the center of the galaxy, its rotational velocity should decrease, which when Vera Rubin and his team observed, found that they are constant. As a result, the rotation curve flattens out. In other words, we can tell that when a cluster of galaxies are orbiting around each other, they move very fast, and it is the gravitational force that keeps them together, allegedly. Gravity, as per Newton's law, comes from the mass. When observed, it is found that there is not sufficient mass that can hold them together. This missing mass is termed dark matter. It's not even close to enough, and when you use Newtonian mechanics, it's off by an immense amount. It can only yield about 1/10 the magnitude required. Now, all of this is said. I know a lot of people are like, whoa, man, you're killing me with pseudoscience. Well, we do look out and we see stuff in the sky. And what this is showing you is that their math doesn't work. F equals ma is defective in their own paradigm. It doesn't work for anything. They have to add in Coriolis and centrifugal forces as if they're real and then claim they're fictitious, but treat them as if they're completely real, as if the universe is moving around us. It's not as simple as saying, oh, well, Einstein just says it's a coordinate system and they're both equally valid. Parallax, don't worry, we'll bury parallax soon, maybe in the next episode. I'm just going to absolutely body bag parallax, and stay tuned for the Friday show this week. And aberration, which is so stupid. But anyway, the point is that when they look out, they have to treat it as if the whole entire cosmos is moving around the Earth. Not that it's just a coordinate system that can be either way because everything's relative, like Einstein said. No. It's way worse than that. To even do anything, they have to start to account for it as if the Earth is stationary and there's a real set of forces generated by the universe moving around us. And of course, they just made up that there must be more mass because they need more energy. And they need more substantive qualities that cause this gravitational effect. They need both. Okay. Now here's Einstein himself, 1913, letter to Ernst Mach. Now keep in mind the date here, 1913. This is where he writes to him saying, well, we'll read it. Highly esteemed colleague, you have probably received a few days ago my new paper on relativity and gravitation, which is now finally completed after unceasing toil and tormenting doubts. Next year, during the solar eclipse, we shall learn whether light rays are deflected by the sun, or in other words, whether the underlying fundamental assumption of the equivalence of the acceleration or the reference frame on the one hand, and the gravitational field on the other hand, is really correct. If yes, then in spite of Planck's unjustified criticism, your brilliant investigations on the foundations of mechanics will have received a splendid confirmation, for it follows of necessity that inertia has its origin in some kind of interaction of the bodies, exactly in accordance with your argument about Newton's bucket experiment. This is him point blank acknowledging the principle, the Machian principle. Okay? Again, he says, it follows of necessity that inertia has its origin in some kind of interaction of the bodies, exactly in accordance with your argument about Newton's bucket experiment. You will find a first consequence in this sense on the top page of page 6 of the paper. Beyond that, the following results have been obtained. If one accelerates an inertial spherical shell S, then according to the theory, a body enclosed by it experiences an accelerating force. If the shell S rotates about an axis passing through its center relative to the fixed stars, the rest system, then a Coriolis field arises inside the shell. The plane of the Foucault pendulum is being carried along, though with a practically immeasurably small velocity. Now if you look here where it's in cursive, you can't even, like, I had like people that spoke German try to translate this, and we could not figure out what this and another line said. So I was accused of like intentionally taking that out, but I obviously did not. Anyway, it gives me great pleasure to be able to tell you about this, all the more so because Planck's criticism always seemed to be most unjustified. With kindest regards, I remain very respectfully yours, Albert Einstein. Thank you sincerely for sending me your book. Now, what people try to say is like, look, he says that, but it'd be practically immeasurably small velocity. Like, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't explain the pendulum. But they're incorrect. They don't understand it. They don't understand it. Now, he is, of course, imposing a few things onto this. For one, he's saying it rotates about an axis passing through its center relative to the fixed stars. So then the field arises in the shell, which is not entirely analogous to the actual situation that's happening. Secondly, now, as we covered earlier, Newton said there was absolute space. Einstein said there is no such thing as absolute space. Einstein was a relativist top to bottom, including morally. But anyway, he also imposes a finite speed of light, and he imposes a vacuum with no ether. All right, now this is 1913, so this is a few years after special relativity, but this is before general relativity comes out. Well, here he is in 1919 in a letter to Lorentz, where he says, it would have been more correct if I have limited myself in my earlier publications to emphasizing only the non-existence of an ether velocity instead of arguing the total non-existence of the ether, for I can see that the word ether we say nothing else than that space has to be viewed as a carrier of physical qualities. Now, in his paper on the electrodynamics of moving bodies, which is also known as special relativity, right, he point blank says there is no ether. Okay? But he had to flip-flop on it. So when he's writing in 1913 here, he's still under this, trying to claim that there is no ether, trying to claim there's a constant speed to light. That's what special relativity says. There's a constant speed to light. Okay, so this is where I need you guys to really stay with me. This is the important part. So what the first rebuttal people allegedly have is, oh, but it says it'll be really small, way too small to cause the effect. Well, we've showed the actual math. That's incorrect. That's incorrect, actually. It yields the proper effect. Einstein's incorrect, and we can show the math. Within their own system. It's important, though. Some people are getting frustrated because I'm doing this, but it's important to understand that, no, within their own paradigm, it is abundantly clear the Earth is, in fact, in the center, and they're lying. Now, whether it's intentional or not, so is it lying? I don't know. Do not contribute malice to that which can be adequately explained with incompetence. Anyway, that's been the argument. Well, for one, you have the ether that's actually translating these inertial forces. That's going to drastically change everything, right? Then you have instantaneous action at a distance, which of course is what he called spooky action at a distance. It can exist in relativity. Fundamentally cannot exist, right? Something can't immediately cause an interaction at a great distance, not according to relativity, not according to the current heliocentric model. But then it's simultaneously they need it to do that. So it's just called like the instantaneous action problem. Like, oh, well, just don't worry about it. Who knows? Spooky action. Okay. Now, this is the part. Keep in mind, though, this is 1913. Like, this is perfect. This person says right here. This dude thinks he's smarter than Einstein. What's so funny is I'm about to use Einstein to dunk on your model. That's what you don't get. Let me just remind everyone of the name of the paper of the presentation here. The name of the presentation is How Einstein's Flip-Flop Buried the Heliocentric Model. So actually, what's going to happen is you're going to stop commenting, or you're going to try to pretend that you're smarter than Einstein, which I don't care. I don't appeal to authority, but if you believe the current model, you got to stick with Einstein's relativity. It's the only thing that could even get close to trying to save your model. That's Michelson-Morley, maybe another stream. Okay, now this is very important. So he's saying, oh, there's no ether. And we'll pull up the PDFs in a second. I have On the Electrodynamics of Moving Bodies, also known as Special Relativity. And of course, I have Einstein Relativity, Special and General Theory. We'll look at those PDFs momentarily. But this is before that. This is him writing to Ernst Mach. Okay, he says it'd be really small. Well, a few years later, in Hendrik Lorentz, in a letter to Hendrik Lorentz 4 years after the General Theory of Relativity, 1 year before he published Relativity, the Special and General Theory, which is like the summarization for the layman, right? He says here, it would have been more correct if I had limited myself in my earlier publications to emphasizing only the non-existence of an ether velocity instead of arguing the total non-existence of the ether. So here he is acknowledging, he point blank said in Special Relativity, no, there's the total non-existence of the ether is what my theory says and claims. And now he's flip-flopping and he's saying there is an ether. He refutes himself. He's refuting himself right here. So when someone says this person thinks he's smarter than Einstein, LOL. Like, try and keep up. So he refutes himself by flip-flopping. Now he says that there is, in fact, an ether. And the only thing that he's saying is that there's not an ether drift. You might say, oh, well, he doesn't technically say there is an ether. He says, I would have been more correct if I had limited myself to saying that there's just no ether velocity. But he says, before I can see that the word ether, we say nothing else than that space has to be viewed as a carrier of physical properties. Yeah, a carrier of physical properties that can be instantaneous? No, but he says there's a speed of light. Here's also his quote about the ether, 1938. It's important to keep an eye on the dates. This is his progression of his own understanding through the years. People will have you believe that Einstein just came in and just like dunked on everybody with relativity. That's not what happened. He reluctantly and just like dragged along, trying to inch his way to explain away the irrefutable evidence that refuted and destroyed the heliocentric model. Michelson-Morley, Michelson-Gale-Pearson, and Airy's failure. It would have been more correct if he says, the word ether has changed its meaning many times in the development of science. At the moment, it no longer stands for a medium built up of particles. Its story, by no means finished, is continued by the relativity theory. So at first he says, there's no ether at all. Then he says, it's my theory is continuing the story of the ether. Now, a lot of flat earthers have come at me about this because like, you're bringing up the ether and that's a globe earth thing and blah, blah, blah. You have to understand that these are fundamentally different things, right? I think I put it in here. I may not have put it in here, but because I saved the other quote for an ether presentation. But the point is that, like Hendrik Lorentz will tell you, it's substantive. The ether has to be substantive. Now, Einstein's not saying that. He can't say that. If the ether is substantive, like it has substantive qualities, it's just a primary state of matter, the primary substance, as Tesla called it. If it's substantive, the heliocentric model is immediately refuted. Immediately refuted. All right, so anyway, he acknowledges here that he had to flip-flop. He says his story is by no means finished. He had to flip-flop. Now people are like, oh, he doesn't mean the same thing. Well, he says right here that it keeps on changing, whatever. He tries to say that there's no medium, but I have, in the ether presentation I'll show you, where all these physicists are like, Einstein's just like double-speaking clown show in many ways. He just double-speaks all the time because he basically flips around in relative GR and invokes exactly what a medium would be. In fact, he says that it can curve. And if it can curve and straighten and move around, then therefore it can thus be capable of vibration. And if it's capable of oscillation or vibration, then it is an ether. It's the ether. So anyway, he contradicts himself. Now that's the first one. Again, this is how Einstein's flip-flop refutes the heliocentric model. First flip-flop is that there is physical qualities that can have instantaneous action at distance. If this is the case, this value right here that he says will be practically immeasurably small velocity will be immense. It'll be significantly bigger, magnitudes bigger. Okay. It's the fall off through great distances. Instantaneous action through an etheric medium. This number will be way bigger. Okay. He ends up admitting that himself a few years later because he has to. Secondly, this is in his paper, Relativity, Special and General Theory. He says, All right, this is actually in on the electrodynamics of moving bodies. So this is special relativity. Everyone's heard this. Two fundamental postulates, right, of special relativity. One is that there's no absolute frames of reference. Everything's relative. Two is that there's a constant speed to light, c. There's a finite limit. There's a speed limit to the universe. And no material nor light can go faster than the speed of light. 186,000 miles a second. Speed limit of light. In agreement with experience, we further assume the quantity to be a universal constant, the velocity of light in empty space. This is him. He says it many times in his paper. That's just one of the examples. Again, it's a special relativity, 1905. He says that there's a speed limit to light. It's constant, c. Okay. Now here is W.G.V. Rosser, William Rosser, An Introduction to the Theory of Relativity, 1964, page 460, explaining what's actually required for relativity. And here it says, it explains that relative to the stationary roundabout, the distant stars would have a velocity, and for sufficiently large values of r, the stars would be moving relative with linear velocities exceeding this speed, the terrestrial value of the velocity of light. Okay, let me go back up. In the theory of special relativity, we used one coordinate system for the whole of space, and using the principle of the constancy of the velocity of light, that the speed of light is constant, one could, in principle, use light signals to synchronize all the clocks at rest in that coordinate system. This is not possible in a rotating coordinate system. One must change one's idea of space and time in the presence of the centrifugal gravitational field. One cannot use one single coordinate system for the whole of space, but one must use infinitesimal local coordinate systems and allow the metric to vary from point to point. What that's saying in simple terms is that you cannot use special relativity on the bigger scale. Right? You fundamentally can't use it regarding the interpretation of space and time. You can't apply a singular coordinate system to all of space. Right? It only applies to inertial systems. It can't be in any way changing or acting in a force. Now, of course, changing in direction and acting as a force that's not a force but acts like a force, you can't apply special relativity to that. It applies to inertial systems, and it applies on smaller, slower scales. This is why it says you can only take that single coordinate system that you have for the whole of space and then use an infinitesimal local coordinate system, meaning a really, really small, flat local coordinate system on small scales, because simply put, special relativity only applies this small local scale in straight lines, flat. You take special relativity, you build it together with a bunch of flat pieces, and then you just add an assumed rate of curvature to it, just like what they do with the Earth, by the way. Relative to the stationary roundabout, we're going to come down. However, the restriction is, because he explains right here, right? Like if you have a stationary roundabout, the distant stars would have a velocity, and for sufficiently large values of r, the stars would be moving relative to O prime with linear velocities exceeding the terrestrial speed of light. At first sight, this appears to be a contradiction of the conclusion derived in 532, and the velocities of all material bodies must be less than c. This is the important part. At first, that seems to be a contradiction that like light and all material bodies can only travel c. It has to be less than the speed of light. However, that restriction, the speed of light, is restricted to the theory of special relativity. According to the general theory, it is possible to choose local reference frames in which, over a limited volume of space, there is no gravitational field, and relative to such a reference frame, the velocity of light is equal to c. However, this is not true when gravitational fields are present. In addition to the lengths of rods and the rates of the clocks, the velocity of light is affected by a gravitational field. If gravitational fields are present, the velocities of either material bodies or of light can assume any numerical value depending on the strength of the gravitational field. If one considers the rotating roundabout as being at rest, the centrifugal gravitational field assumes enormous values at large distances, and it is consistent with the theory of general relativity for the velocities of distant bodies to exceed the speed of light in these conditions. So point blank, he flip-flopped with general relativity And he doesn't attribute a finite speed of light. So the number one rebuttal to the Machian principle that I've been explaining here, number one, is that it wouldn't be strong enough. Oh, well, he's assuming no ether and instantaneous action at distance in 1913. He then flip-flopped on that. The second one is that if you actually have everything moving around the Earth and you're saying that that causes the real actual forces, right? So you have the Euler centrifugal and Coriolis forces causing a real centripetal radially inward accelerative force on the Earth, right? That can explain the pendulum or the ring laser gyro, the sidereal rotation within the vortex of the ether effectively, right? But basically it's like the vortex of the entire universe, the cosmos is all moving around the Earth. Either way, with the angular momentum of the whole cosmos moving around it, then it would cause this. Now Einstein himself admits right here that that has to happen. Right? He says it follows of necessity that inertia has its origin in some kind of interaction of the bodies, exactly in accordance with your argument, Machian principle. Okay? He's saying you're making a bit of an assumption, right? You're not actually applying it to all the greater distances. Now, this is what's very important. The next thing they try to say is, well, yeah, Einstein said it was legit. He said it would work until someone did the math and they said, oh, well, everything out past Neptune would have to go faster than the speed of light. Side note about Neptune. The whole story about how they discovered is hilariously wrong. They had to actually account for the centrifugal and Coriolis and Euler forces as if they were real to even try to find that interaction. They try to claim that like it verifies Newtonian mechanics and it verifies the heliocentric model when it does nothing of the sorts. It has to treat it as if it's actually a geocentric model with real forces coming from the cosmos moving around the Earth and translating that within, and of course that being proportionate to distance away from the center of the Earth. All right, anyway, it's just funny. Like they actually had to get geocentric Earth to do all of this, all their math fairy tales. They say, oh well, but Einstein walked it back. No, he never walked it back. Some other person said, oh well, this wouldn't work because of the speed of light. Okay, but this is the problem. According to Einstein, he flip-flops on the ether. And then meaning that there can be instantaneous action at a distance he had to yield. Okay. He says, look, there's a constant velocity. There's a universal, that means everywhere in the universe, a universal constant, the velocity of light in this empty space. And then we just see here, general relativity says that's not the case. So now the number one rebuttal against it is that, well, the stuff that's super far away, if it's all moving around the Earth every day, if you have sidereal rotation where everything is moving once a day, the stuff that's super far away would have to go way faster than the speed of light. So it wouldn't work in relativity. But you are wrong. You are incorrect. Here is an expert in relativity telling you that actually at great distances within the presence of a gravitational field, according to relativity itself, things can go way faster than the speed of light, which means that not only can the Earth be in the center of the cosmos, according to relativity, due to coordinate systems, because everything can be the center, so can Jupiter, everything, which is such a stupid argument. So can Jupiter, so can Venus. We see everything go around us. We see the stars and stuff move around us, okay? So the question is everything moving around us on the Earth, or are we spinning, causing it to look like that? That's the question. Okay, now, if everything is far away, it can move. Relativity says that it can physically happen dynamically and kinematically. So not just kinematically and geometrically with a coordinate system, but also dynamically it can happen because of the translation of forces due to the angular motion within the presence of a quote-unquote gravitational field. According to general relativity, the distant masses themselves, the masses, can go way faster than the speed of light because they're in the presence of a gravitational field with that great distance. And you might say, oh, well, this is just some random guy talking about relativity. Well, here's Einstein himself saying it. So this is game over. In the second place, our result shows that according to the general theory of relativity, the law of the constancy of the velocity of light in a vacuum, which constitutes one of the two fundamental assumptions in the special theory of relativity, and to which we have already frequently referred, cannot claim any unlimited validity. Game over. It's game over. And I know that this is not going to be for everyone, but it is what it is. This is very important. Okay. Einstein, This is Albert Einstein, Relativity, Special and General Theory, 1920. I think it's page 89 in my PDF, but I think it's actually page 76 in the original writing. Einstein himself is here in general relativity saying, oh, well, yeah, I said that there was a special relativity. I mean, I said that there was a constant speed to light that's universal in special relativity, but I had to flip-flop on that, which means he's now conceding that if the Earth's at rest and everything moves around it, it's going to translate everything to the Earth. It's going to explain everything, and that even according to general relativity, it's dynamically possible that the Earth is in the center, and it must be conceded, which now if you take that, now I obviously don't believe in general relativity. It's pseudoscientific nonsense. You can't attribute conceptual abstractions with physical properties. You can't give concepts physical properties, just like I talked to Professor Parks about. You can't do any of that. This is the point. If you want to go around and believe in this paradigm, you need to learn what it is that you believe in. You can, according to your paradigm, you can never prove that the Earth is not at the center. You can only believe it on philosophical grounds, and not just because of coordinate system. Dynamically speaking, again, Einstein flip-flopped and buried the heliocentric model. So, in conclusion, Einstein proposed the special theory of relativity. Let me come over here for this. Einstein proposed the special theory of relativity to save the heliocentric model. Okay? Now, this is where, like, even flat earthers try and come at me. It's like, okay, well, just set up a debate with me. Just set up a debate with me. Fairly moderated debate. You'll never, Okay. Michelson-Morley showed the Earth was not orbiting around the sun. That's what it showed. Einstein tries to save it. Do we have I think we have this, yeah. Einstein tries to save it. So what does he do? Just like he says himself, whenever he came across Michelson-Morley, which showed that the Earth was not moving. Just like every physicist knows, that's one of the obvious answers to the results. What does Einstein say that he did? Oh, well, that was the first path that led him to the special theory of relativity. Okay? So that's why he came up with special relativity in the first place, was to save the heliocentric model, specifically that the Earth is allegedly orbiting the sun. He had to save it, so he came up with special relativity, which is pseudoscientific nonsense in and of itself, where he says that there's no such thing as absolutes. Yeah, the Earth's at rest. That's an absolute frame of reference to measure against. We do that all the time. In fact, everything on the Earth measures against the Earth as the absolute reference frame. So, we've been to space, game over. Like, even if you believe that you've gone to space, in that paradigm, you still have to concede that the Earth could be geocentric according to your own position. I could pretend to believe in space travel and destroy heliocentrism even more. That's the funny part. Like, even more. So it's not game over at all. This presentation is just clearly over your head. Frankly, it's over your head. Sorry. But for example, like they believe in satellites that they send out, but they send the satellites out in the opposite direction of the way that the angular momentum of the cosmos is moving, and that's how you have geostationary satellites. And they actually account for it in their paradigm of believing in satellites. They account for it as if there's a real force coming from the angular momentum of a cosmos moving around a stationary Earth. And so basically it's just counteracting and it stays still. Like that's what your math says. So if you believe you went to space, it's like even worse for you. If you believe the stories they claim that they went to space, then you have to look at the math they claim to have used. And it all uses Newtonian mechanics, and it all uses the centrifugal, Coriolis, and Euler forces as if they're real, actual forces. So hilariously enough, you just got dunked on even more. But anyway, obviously, space travel is complete nonsense. They're claiming to go to Narnia, right? I don't buy any of that. I don't believe in stories that come from the federal government that consistently lied about going to the moon and brought Nazis over here and show us all kinds of fake glitches and VR screens. If you want to believe that the NASA is the only part of the U.S. government that isn't like lying, then you go for that. Okay. The point here is though that Einstein came up with special relativity to save the globe heliocentric model. It was dead. It had been refuted. It was over. So he comes along and he saves it, and he tells you himself that's why I came up with special relativity in the first place. And the way that they save it, and we've covered it many times, was by introducing special relativity and then claiming that there was a length contraction, that the measuring apparatus contracted just the right amount just a sufficient amount as if to compensate. Now, actually, just to save me, let me come back over here. I know this is a really information-heavy stream, but that's why people will mock and all this stuff, but it's like, I don't care. If you're a flat earther, like, mocking this, you need to, like, sit down and, like, listen to it, maybe. All right. But I'm not going to give into it. All right, here we go. So, get out of here, bruh. Okay, so here Einstein explains in Special Theory of Relativity section of his paper, which is Relativity, Special, and General Theory. I'll drop all the PDFs in the Telegram as always, t.me/WitsitStreams. That's better. All right. So here he explains where they're gonna do Michelson-Morley, right? And he's explaining what you should expect. Right. And he says, in one of the most notable of these attempts, Michelson devised a method which appears that it should be decisive. Imagine two mirrors arranged on a body where the reflecting surfaces are facing each other. You come down here. He explains that when the body is moving perpendicularly to the planes of the mirrors from resulting when the motion is parallel to these planes, right? Okay, so simply put, although the estimated difference between these two times is exceedingly small, meaning the one going with the motion of the Earth, one going perpendicular against the motion of the Earth of the light rays, Michelson-Morley performed an experiment involving interference, which is interferometry, right? So even though it's a really small difference, they came up with a pretty brilliant way to use interferometry. In fact, Albert Michelson invented it, in which this difference should have been clearly detectable. And now he's using his words very particular. Although it's exceedingly small, right? He came up with, again, what it says is that he came up with a test that should be decisive, right? And that even though the difference of the light moving with the Earth and against the Earth, that difference is exceedingly small. This estimated difference is exceedingly small. Michelson and Morley performed an experiment involving interference or interferometry in which the difference should have been clearly detectable. But the experiment gave a negative result, a fact that was very perplexing to physicists. Now, when he says clearly detectable, it's because it was over 10 times more sensitive than it needed to be. It could detect as small as 2 miles a second, while the Earth is allegedly orbiting close to 20 miles a second. So it was very perplexing to physicists. It gave a negative result. But Lorentz and Fitzgerald rescued the theory. What theory? The heliocentric theory. The idea that the Earth revolves around the sun. The Lorentz and Fitzgerald rescued the theory from this difficulty. Now, I mean, he'll say that it's moving around the sun relative to the ether. But both is what we're being tested in Michelson-Morley. That's why the name of the paper is The Relative Motion of the Earth Within the Ether. The Earth and the Ether. Anyway, Lorentz and Fitzgerald rescued the theory from the difficulty by assuming that the motion of the body relative to the ether produces a contraction of the body in the direction of motion, meaning that the amount of contraction was just the right amount, just sufficient, the perfect amount to compensate for the difference in time mentioned above. Now, of course, there was no experiments, there was no science done whatsoever. They just did the math. They were like, okay, there should have been this much of a difference if the Earth is moving around the sun. It wasn't there. So let's just say that the apparatus itself contracted that amount. Let's do the math. Okay, we'll call this Lorentz contraction. It must have contracted that much. That's how they got the number. They didn't do a test or something. They were like, oh, it must have contracted that much. Okay. Now, they were saying that the ether did that. A lot of ballers get really confused here. Einstein, well, we'll get there in a second. Comparison with this discussion in section 12 shows that from this standpoint also of the theory of relativity, this solution to the difficulty was the right one. What was the solution to the difficulty? Lorentz and Fitzgerald rescued the theory from this difficulty by assuming that the motion of the body relative to the ether produces a contraction of the body in the direction of motion, the amount of contraction being just sufficient to compensate for the time mentioned above, which is exceedingly small. The time that is exceedingly small. Right? The time difference being exceedingly small. Okay. So that's what he's talking about. He's saying that, well, if you look at what we just covered in section 12, that also according to the theory of relativity that I'm proposing, their solution that the apparatus contracted just the right amount to make it look like the Earth wasn't moving, that solution was the right one according to relativity as well. But on the basis of relativity, the method of interpretation is incomparably more satisfactory, meaning what he said was, because what they said was, yeah, it's contracting, but there's no physical mechanism and they couldn't really explain it, and it should have been testable, and then it wasn't measurable anywhere. Whereas Einstein said, oh, well, yeah, that happened because that had to happen in relation to moving around the sun. If you're claiming the Earth moves around the sun, there has to be some magic trick that happened. The universe had to wave its magic wand to deceive you into thinking that it wasn't moving. So Einstein took their idea, said, oh, but it happened just because of reference frames. Everything's relative. There's no ether. There's no absolute frame of reference, right? And for you on the Earth, it doesn't contract for you, quote unquote, because you're in that entire reference frame that's moving relative to the sun, which means you're contracting relative to the sun as well as the apparatus, as well as the space. So you won't be able to tell because everything is contracting together in relation to the sun. Now, that's what they were trying to detect, right? The motion around the sun that they assumed religiously, right? Which is why up here he says, right here, here the contraction of moving bodies follows from the two fundamental principles of the theory without the introduction of a particular hypothesis, and as the prime factor involved in this contraction we find not the motion in itself, to which we cannot attach any meaning, but the motion with respect to the body of reference chosen. Okay, so the motion with respect to the body of reference chosen, that is the sun, because they used the 30 kilometer a second, or roughly 20 mile a second, speed that they assumed the Earth was moving around the sun. So they used that motion, the orbital motion assumed of the Earth, with respect to the sun, the body of reference chosen, okay? And that's how they got their fringe shift prediction that they didn't get. That's where they got the Lorentz contraction. That's where they got the amount of Lorentz contraction still used to this day with Lorentz transforms, Lorentz contractions, and time dilation built upon that. In all physics today, to try to transform everything we see, that we always treat the Earth as the absolute reference frame in which everything is measured against, as if there's also an absolute background medium. We treat it like that, and we transform it over to relativistic coordinate systems. There's a coordinate system moving with the Earth. The mirror of Michelson and Morley is not shortened, like how I just explained it, but it is shortened for a coordinate system which is at rest relatively to the sun, right? Which is why, again, if you're trying to detect the motion with respect to the body of reference of the sun, then from that coordinate system on the Earth, you're not going to see it shorten. It's only going to shorten in the reference frame of the sun, which means you won't be able to detect it. Okay, and that's what he explains. He also goes on to, of course, like specifically explain that they were trying to detect the movement around the sun, which he calls a rotation, which is funny because people deny that as well. All right, and here, of course, is Einstein specifically saying that speed of light is constant. But let's find where he says that it's not here in this paper, just so you can see it yourself real fast. How dare you? In the second place, our results show that according to the general theory of relativity, the law of the constancy of the velocity of light in a vacuum, which constitutes one of the two fundamental assumptions. Yeah, you don't say. You don't say, Einstein. We know. One of the two fundamental assumptions in the special theory of relativity, and to which we have already frequently referred, cannot claim any unlimited validity. Now, to avoid someone claiming I'm cherry picking, okay, what he explains is, again, you can't claim that there's an unlimited validity to the idea that there is actually a constancy of velocity of light. A curvature of rays of light can only take place when the velocity of propagation of light varies with position. So he's explaining that it can vary. For him to even invoke his idea that they're going to look into the sky and see that gravity allegedly causes light to bend. So he's like, my own theory even calls it. Now, he's pretty smooth. He's a grabbler. He's clearly deceptive because he actually has to invoke this just because of the dynamical implications of his theory itself, right? Including the Machian principle. But he just kind of says that it's he's smooth with it, where he just like brings up an idea that he's going to be touted for as like a genius to come up with a way to test it, allegedly, right? And then he says that's what it is. It doesn't matter. The point is that he had to integrate into his theory, no matter how smoothly he tried to do it, that in fact general relativity no longer attributes a constant speed to light. He says, now we might think that is a consequence of this, the special theory of relativity, and with it, the whole theory of relativity would be laid in the dust. Now, it's because the theory of relativity, general theory, is also dependent upon the special theory, its postulates. But, he said, but in reality, this is not the case. We can only conclude that the special theory of relativity cannot claim an unlimited domain of validity. It results hold only so long as we are able to disregard the influences of gravitational fields and the phenomena, i.e. of light. So what he's saying here is like, oh, well, where there's no gravity, in inertial frames where nothing's acting on it, right? And on really small, local, compartmentalized, infinitesimal scales, this is why they try to use SR on the quantum scale. He's basically saying, well, it doesn't actually debunk special relativity. It just means you can only use it in certain places, which is what they still try to say to this day. But almost no one will tell you that according to Einstein himself, there actually isn't a constant speed of light in general relativity, and that distant bodies can move faster than the speed of light. All right, so I know that was a lot. I can keep going, but I don't want to just like bury you guys with it. But long story short, Einstein himself tells you he had to flip-flop. Okay, so let me come over here and talk to you guys now. So basically the summary of the whole stream, I know that was a lot, but hopefully you guys can break it up, watch it again, send it to people, just kind of understand it. If someone is being real arrogant, show them this stream, be like, okay, see if you can actually rebut this. I think it's important to inform ourselves. Yo, what up, Shane? Are we cruising over here? Yep, run Boston Bear. Yo, does everyone see the stream over here, hopefully? Yeah. I decided to throw Rokfin up on the chat. I thought it was cool on the stream. I can also just be like, wait, what's going on with YouTube? What up over there, YouTube? So basically, again, Einstein was like, oh, we got to save the heliocentric model. What are we going to do? And he comes up with special relativity. And when I say comes up with, he stole and took a bunch of pieces from other people and plagiarized it. So he tries to save it by saying, oh, the apparatus contracted just the perfect amount to compensate for the missing time difference that would happen if we were orbiting around the sun in relation to the sun. I mean, yeah, the Earth was orbiting in relation to the sun. Of course, that's redundant within relativity because it says nothing is at rest in the entire universe, but that nothing can be considered in motion other than in relation to something else. So, okay, the Earth is allegedly orbiting in relation to the sun. So this whole like it wouldn't shorten for you thing is an irrelevant thing to bring up because allegedly we're tilted, wobbling, spinning, revolving around the sun, which means if we're going to try to detect that motion of us moving around the sun, okay, then we're using that relationship, that relative motion, okay, which means Einstein had to integrate the idea that it contracted objectively. No matter how much the ballers try to fight this, just like they tried to fight that the math came from that, and then they did the math trying to make fun of me, and then found out that I was completely correct, and it's exactly the math. The same thing with this, okay? They say that it doesn't contract for you on the Earth because in relation to the sun, everything on the Earth is contracting. The space, the Earth, the apparatus, everything that's moving around the sun is contracting, okay? That's why they say it doesn't contract for you on the Earth. But technically, if the Earth is moving around the sun, it is contracting around the sun that it's moving to, which is the only way you can say the Earth is orbiting at all. As soon as you say the Earth is orbiting, you're invoking the sun. As soon as you do that, you have to claim that it's contracting in relation to its motion around the sun. That means to explain Michelson morally. Okay, so you have to say that, and he tried to save the day by saying that there's no absolute frames of reference, right? That there is no ether the way that people think that there is. That there's a constant speed to light, right? And that there's contraction of the apparatus and that time dilates, expands, changes size physically, dilates, and then slows down. So as the distance gets shorter and the time period changes, then it'll look like the Earth is stationary. So that's how he tried to save the heliocentric model, because it was just like we covered here. And I have a geocentrism stream that's just like tons of physicists telling you this. And I'm not appealing to their authority, a basic understanding of the test the current theories of the time and the current heliocentric model's theory of relativity show you that it did in fact show that the Earth was stationary. So we have special relativity. It tries to get rid of the results and it invokes Lorentz contraction, because Einstein didn't come up with anything. He was basically an orchestra, or like he just orchestrated plagiarism. That's what he did. Okay, so I'm trying to get to the end because I know this was really information heavy. I'm sorry. So he tries to save the heliocentric model. What happens is he ends up having to flip-flop within 10 years to send out general relativity, and it's because he had to. Now, his cover story is like, one of the reasons, I guess, is that he's like, I wrote the general relativity to explain the perihelion shift of Mercury. Well, that didn't work. He still didn't explain it. It was discovered like 4 decades before that, so it was something that didn't work with the Newtonian mechanics because their model consistently doesn't work. That's the truth, because it's not real. It's never going to work. So Einstein's supposedly going to fix that for perihelion shift. That's not why he came up with the general theory of relativity. He had to, though. His claims spill over into the idea of gravity within the heliocentric model. They start to spill over. They start to taint it. He thought he could just come take Maxwell's equations, come take our electrodynamic theories, then just change them and say that they're relative and that he could be some type of genius without doing any work and he could save the heliocentric model. But that spills over into all kinds of physical claims about the alleged motions of everything relative to the Earth. Therefore, he had to come in and try to propose another one that he also stole specifically from Henry Poincaré. Anyway, point is, in general relativity, he had to flip-flop and say that there isn't an actual universal constant speed of light. Now, you Google, is there a speed of light, and everything will tell you that nothing in the universe can go faster than that. It'll tell you that space itself is expanding up to 4 times faster than the speed of light, but that doesn't break the speed of light, though. This is because they want their cake and they want to eat it too. They want to use special relativity on the small scale, right? They want to use this construct for all these other things of physics that they try to use it for, including their distances. They claim to use the speed of light for all kinds of distances to space and all this different stuff. So they need the speed of light, even though their actual own theory says that there is no actual like constant speed limit to light. So then they look out, they want to believe that the Earth is not expanding. So then they look out and they say, they want to believe that the Earth is not the center. So they had to say the universe is expanding. It's like, it's accelerating and expanding in all directions. It's going 4 times the speed of light. Well, then what's the energy that causes that? We could try to use the quantum energy that's in a vacuum because we presuppose that the sky's a vacuum. But that would be off by 10 to the 120th power. It has too much energy. So we don't really know what to do. Some people say that's not a discrepancy, but they can't use quantum energy. So then what is dark energy? It's some unidentified mathematical fix that gives you the energy to make the universe expand in all directions, to save your precious little Copernican principle, your philosophy for weirdos that hate the idea of a creator, and blatantly in the face of all empirical evidence and science that has just dunked on you for centuries at a time, just consistently refuted your position, just run away, claimed, never mind, the universe is actually expanding in all directions. So I predicted that the universe would be chaotic and not care about me at all because I'm a tiny blue pale dot. And then turns out that everything's moving in relation to the Earth like it's the center. Then we'll move the goalpost and say, that's an illusion. There is no center. Everywhere in the universe looks like it's the center. Everywhere can be the center, like a balloon, like Professor Parks told you, or like raisin bread being like a bunch of raisins in a loaf of bread that's being baked in an oven, right? It looks like you're in the center no matter where you are. And therefore it's accelerating in an expansion away from you in all directions. And now they're like, man, well, with that claim, we're forced to now say that the universe is going up to at least 4 times faster than the speed of light, but that it doesn't break the speed of light rule in that they built their physics on, because it's just space itself, and space doesn't have information, it's emptiness. Except Einstein's right here saying it's not empty. Relativity says it has to be endowed with physical properties to such an absurd extent that it actually attributes physical properties to conceptual abstractions to remove the substantive quality of the ether. I know I'm all over the place with a lot of information, but some people really like these like streams like this. So that's like, I had to kill myself because I'm like, I kill my vibe right there because I'm like, yo, you guys are probably like, wow, this guy is just going so much. But here's Einstein right here saying that in fact that space has to be endowed with physical properties, and that he misspoke when he asserted the non-existence of the ether, but he only reluctantly said that in his flip-flop that ends up refuting the heliocentric position, ironically, in general relativity, because he was rather forced to do that, which is actually his words. He says we are rather forced to have an ether. So take that up with him and Paul Dirac. Paul Dirac, who says that we're rather forced to have an ether, the father of quantum field theory, or quantum mechanics, effectively, modern interpretation of quantum mechanics. quantum electrodynamics, one could say. So long story short, he also flip-flops on ether. And now a lot of flat earthers are like, Austin's pushing the ether. He's pushing like the globe heliocentric model. They need it for the vacuum. They need it for light to travel. You don't understand. They cannot have a substantive background medium or the entire heliocentric model immediately overnight ends. There's no way around it. That's why they have to claim it's basically Newtonian emptiness, but there's something there called space and time. But it's physical, but not physical. It's actual, but not actual. So it doesn't bother anything. It doesn't impede anything. It doesn't get in the way of anything. It's just there, but it's bending and warping. It's conceptual. It's figurative. It's not actual, but it has real physical properties, which is absurd and stupid. If they invoke a substantive quality, anything else outside of this magical concepts that have physical properties called a reification fallacy, immediately their model dies. Immediately. Okay, so any truth they're trying to shut down the conversation of the ether seems to not actually intellectually grasp the physics involved, right? And the actual theoretical implications within their pseudoscientific model. Sure, there's a million different ways to destroy the current model, but the point is that they cannot acknowledge it. It is not the ether in that sense. He was forced to say, oh, there could be an ether, right? Because it has to have physical properties. And the point of that is that means there can be instantaneous action at a distance, which, by the way, light is instant. It's nothing more than an excitation of the background medium that's already there. It's a perturbation, a disturbance of the background medium that's already there. So if somebody asked me to do a stream on light, I'll do a stream on like light and magnetism, electricity, and ether. I'll have like some maybe I'll do that in Relatively Speaking. I don't know. Because I don't want to just talk about the pseudoscience so much that it's like, oh my gosh, these people are lost in the sauce, which they are. But I mean, if people understand the argument that was just made in this stream, it completely destroys the heliocentric model. There's no way around it. Absolutely no way around it. And one thing it does definitively is it refutes any claim of someone claiming exclusivity of a heliocentric model. They can't claim that according to their own belief system, whether you choose Newtonian, modified Newtonian, or Einsteinian mechanics. You can't say that. And anyway, you can have instantaneous action at a distance, right? Which Einstein called spooky action at a distance. What people do is they've been given these mainstream pop sci answers to repeat, to act like nothing's a big deal. Oh, well, it was actually Einstein was wrong. He called it spooky, but there's nothing spooky about it. Oh, Einstein actually said it was his greatest blunder for dark energy, but he had dark energy in his own thing. He actually had the cosmological constant in his math. He messed up. He just didn't know it. Dark energy is not even a problem. What is it? I don't know. I can't define it. Dark matter is not even a problem. That's like, it's just called propaganda. It's being brainwashed. But the truth is, these are things that just refute the position. So long story short, Einstein flip-flopped on the constant speed of light, and he flip-flopped on the idea that there was actually a background that could sustain instantaneous action at a distance, right? That could facilitate instantaneous action at a distance. Therefore, if everything is moving around a stationary Earth, which it is, by the way, I can assure you that it is. And this, like, I'll bury this later, right? But like aberration, parallax, retrograde, just like you're tossing me softballs. Like I'm just gonna go 5 for 5 home runs, dude. You know, I can assure you that stellar parallax, stellar aberration, and retrograde in no way prove that the Earth is moving through space. And if that's the best you have, I encourage you to keep saying that. Because anyone that does research is going to be like, whoa, that's the best they have. So you don't get to fly into the face of empirical evidence that consistently shows us the same thing because you have some weirdo philosophical bias where you want to be insignificant, think that it makes you smarter, whatever it is. Like, that's just not how science works. So in conclusion, Einstein flip-flopped on those two things. What that means is that, of course, everything can be moving around the central Earth. The angular momentum of the rotation around the Earth would then translate down to the Earth. There would be no such thing as fictitious forces, whatever that means. It would be actual forces. Just like there's actually a force when I spin this pin. It's an actual force when I spin a basketball on my finger. It's an actual force when I get on a merry-go-round. We're talking about actual physical reality, real life forces, not fairy tales that we can't prove. We're talking about, we see the sky moves. We know that when things have angular momentum and they rotate, they create real forces. Centrifugal forces, Coriolis forces. The Coriolis force is a real thing. The current model tries to claim it in some fictitious way, pseudo way. Oh, it's real, but it's not real, but it can be thought of like it's real, but it's not really real, but you're going to see the illusion of the effects being real, even though it's not real, but it's just dependent on reference frame, even though I don't even know what that means. I just say inertial and non-inertial reference frame. I think it makes me smart. So I just say refraction, gravity, and inertial frames, and I think that I'm now a genius. And the point is that we're talking about real life. everything moving around the sky. Now, I don't believe in any of the distances they claim. There's a clearly there's a fluid-like, more dense medium where everything's moving. We'll cover that in later episodes. I know I'm going really fast. I'm sorry. But I just want to get all my thoughts out. So the point is that everything is moving around the Earth. There's angular momentum, okay? Again, just to recover this, you have centrifugal force that's moving to the outside. You have Coriolis force that's moving to the inside. The Coriolis force, so you have everything moving around the Earth. That Coriolis force is twice as strong as the centrifugal force. That results in a net centripetal force, which means radially inward. Just like when you have a magnet, you have centripetal and centrifugal. Centripetal and centrifugal, however you want to say it. I normally say the latter. So you have centrifugal divergence and centripetal convergence, right? And that is overlap, a conjugate geometric expression of the magnetic field. We'll cover that another time. Basically, it's just the geometric expression of pressure mediation. It's all motion. The north and south pole is just simply counterclockwise and clockwise motion. There's a vortex and an anti-vortex, breathing in and breathing out. Everything's actually a geometric expression. We live within this, by the way, and that explains all the motion. That explains the actual equal and opposite reaction, the reciprocation. This explains the magnetic force relationship between the bodies in the sky. Now, anyway, if you just take their distances and all this nonsense, which we don't believe, I don't believe in any of that. I wouldn't suggest you believe in any of the stupid vacuum fairy tales that defy second law of thermodynamics sitting beside an atmosphere when gases don't take shapes. You know what I'm saying? Like, there is no vacuum out there just sitting beside a spinning, tilted, wobbling ball in space. But the point is, if you took all their distances, it doesn't matter. The principle is the same. If the whole cosmos is moving around the Earth, it's going to translate force to the Earth, and it's actually going to keep the Earth there. Now, the Earth seems to be on foundations, so it doesn't need to be kept there. It's just there. That's where it was put, right? And seemingly, maybe like actually the center of the toroid of the entire universe actually radiates out from the center of us, and that's really hard to grasp. But what's so interesting is, we'll get into that later. I'll start ranting about that. So, long story short. If you believe in the current model, then you have to concede the legitimacy of the geocentric model when it comes to like equal validity. And this is just a fact. So there's that. I know that was a lot, sorry. Yeah. Sorry, I know some people are going to be like triggered about this stream in multiple ways, but look, I mean, you guys know what relatively speaking is about now. Like, this is the series. So, all right. Thank you guys for kicking it. I got to wrap it up now. That was a lot, but hopefully you guys enjoyed. There is no rebuttal. Again, let me just like say this one more time. Like, what people will try to say when you explain the Machian principle, like, that's already been debunked. You're like, no, it hasn't. What are you talking about? Like, okay, well, here's the math from your own paradigm. Can you tell me how it's wrong? Well, how's it been debunked? They won't have an answer. Then explain to them Einstein. You're like, oh, well, it would have to go faster than the speed of light, anything past Neptune. Oh, well, Einstein himself said things that matter and light can go faster than the speed of light in the presence of gravitational fields as the distance increases. So what? Newtonian mechanics also says that the Earth would be at the center if there was an actual real reciprocating force without an absolute space. So Newton said, oh, well, the Earth is moving around the sun because space is absolute, so there's no actual inertial force or equal and opposite interaction or reaction, right? There's no reciprocating force that's actual, so the Earth moves around the sun. And look at the gravitational field of the sun is so big, and therefore it's going to pull the Earth around it. And he just talked about the local place and didn't even extend out there, even in their made-up distances and all that, right? It doesn't matter. None of that matters. Where they pretend to know the size of Venus. Oh, Venus is the same size as the Earth. We can make up the whole model to get the astronomical unit, all that pseudoscientific nonsense and presupposition. It doesn't matter. Like, he just talked about the sun, the Earth moving around it because of the gravitational field, because there's an absolute space. He didn't talk about anything outside the solar system. So when people, like, it doesn't even work on the solar system, by the way. It doesn't even work. Like, say, for example, how did you get Neptune? You use Newtonian mechanics, but you had to add in actual forces, mathematically treat them as if they were physically real and actual, and then claim that was Newtonian mechanics. No, the only way that people started to discover, this is what's so ironic. The only way people started to discover the way things move in relation to each other in the sky was they had to treat the physics, mathematically describe the physics as if the actual cosmos was moving around the Earth. Literally, they had to use a centrifugal Coriolis and Euler forces as if they were actual to figure out where these things would move in relation to each other. It's because everything's intrinsically electromagnetic, and that's what's moving everything around in relation to each other, and similarly within a fluid-like medium. But they hijacked this. They called it gravity, said there's immense distances, say that there's a vacuum, so they had to come up with some magical idea called gravity, right? Because they had to come up with different masses and distances and all this pseudoscientific nonsense. But anyway, you get it. The point is that he said that it was absolute fixed space, okay? and therefore, he can't think of a way that there'd be real actual forces to call equal and opposite reaction of what he called gravitation. Now, if the sky itself is moving, if the cosmos is moving, it's not absolute, it's moving around you, then he refutes his own position, right? So now you do have the real set of forces, and everything can move around the Earth. Now I don't believe in Newtonian mechanics. I don't believe in Einsteinian mechanics. I think that Newtonian mechanics can be useful for some things, but I don't believe in it. I'm not stupid. I know that like the idea, anything to do with like mass attracting mass or gravitation, all this is pseudoscience. Everything's intrinsically electromagnetic. It's absolutely a joke to think that matter attracts matter intrinsically just because mass attracts mass, gravity being an intrinsic property of matter, stupid. The idea that space-time can bend and warp, stupid. It's all stupid. The idea that there's some type of like magical force that's not a force can be thought of like a force that's in the fourth dimension, comprised of the third dimension, three-dimensionality of all other things, and it's actually conceptual abstractions, an absence of things. It's like the professor of astronomy is telling you it's just length, width, and height. What? No, that's descriptions, mathematical descriptions. So that's not an actual physical thing. How can you attribute physical reality? Oh, the pen is space. No, the book and the pen's not space. That's actually matter, and which you're conceptually describing with what we call length. Can you hand me a length? Can you hand me an inch? No, of course not. You can hand me something that has a length. You can't then give physical properties to it. I don't believe in any of this. And obviously I shouldn't even have to give this disclaimer here. I don't believe in any of this stuff that I just now exposed in this stream. That's not what it's about. What it's about is pulling the veil back, showing you this is what relatively speaking is about. Actually, according to the current model, the best a heliocentric model could come up with to try to save the idea in the face of all the insurmountable amount of empirical evidence that shows that the Earth is moving, which is all evidence ever, that the Earth is not moving, that it's stationary, right? They had to say, oh, well, it's always going to look like that. And that's kinematically and dynamically. Anyone that tells you different is misinformed. I would not attribute malice to them because they're probably just ignorant. That's the truth. They've been misled. Even popular science articles will mislead you nowadays, right? So they're just misled. They're brainwashed. But you can send them this. You can send them the papers I'll drop in t.me/Witsit streams. All right, cool. There, I know that was a lot. Take it or leave it. Some people like it. Some people won't. In a world. I'll drop this presentation. I'll drop all the PDFs. Cool. And then you guys can give me some feedback. Give me some feedback in the comments. Do you think I was talking too much? Was I talking too fast? Do I need to make it simpler? Do I need to get less into the pseudoscience? I know a lot of people think I need to get less into their pseudoscience, but I wanted the first few episodes to kind of cover that, break it down, expose it. You guys can just give me your feedback. But anyway, of course, this is relatively speaking. We will have, I'm working on so many things. So I'll create like a schedule, like a full schedule that gets put up at the beginning and the end of each stream. Because I do read your comments, by the way. I just know if I start commenting back on a lot of them, I'll never get anything done.
Thanks for the stream and info. I thought I heard you say you'd keep more from Witsit.live donations. Peace, man.
Yes, I will. Sierra Daddies, thank you so much for the $20 tip. And Witsit.live is the best place to support. It's basically like sending me something on PayPal. So now you guys get to pop up on the stream through PayPal. So you guys don't have to send through YouTube. I thought that was pretty fire. Thank you for the support. That's cool, man. That's cool. I don't have to keep up with anything. I'm just like chilling, just reads it. Everyone can donate from all the platforms of the same place. I like it. I like it. Eventually, it'll let you just take credit cards straight up, but I have to prove myself through their system with consistent streaming and viewers before and then you could just use any credit card. You don't have to use PayPal. So I think it's pretty cool. It just takes like a small processing fee. So I think it's pretty cool. Instead of always using the pseudoscience terms, start introducing the correct ones. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. But the correct ones oftentimes have to be replaced. But yeah, I try to always throw in that it's electromagnetic. Hearing pushback from opposition really helps to strengthen your position. Yeah. These presentations are a devastating blow to the narrative. Yeah, I think so, especially if I'm conveying the message properly. I'm going to put up where like there's a schedule. Shout out to the 28 premium Rokfin watchers. Shout out to you guys. Just so you guys know, like I always end up forgetting, like there's not any tips here right now, but there's usually tips on Rokfin and I forget them. I feel bad. So at one point I'm just gonna pull up all the Rokfin tips and I'll read them all, and that I've missed before because I feel bad. I read them a lot of the time, but sometimes I miss them, and I'm gonna always do this right here, right where you can see. I can just pop up Rokfin like that, and so we can keep up with it. Oh yeah. All right. Cool. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the stream. Like I said, I updated my description, I think. So you can go down there. You'll see I have my Telegram link for the streams. I have my Telegram link for the chat. A lot of stuff going on for Audit NASA. I'll actually add to the description after this publishes. I'll add the form if you want to fill it out. NDA that should be in some of the past streams. And we're really getting that ball rolling. It's going to be dope. So it's going to be very cool soon. We're going to start pumping out different like actual missions here soon. So Audit NASA is going to be super cool. If you want to support Audit NASA, send it to $Audit NASA on Cash App. That's all I have set up right now. I tried to do the PayPal. They didn't let me receive the money held what someone had donated a few months ago. It's a whole thing. Not dealing with it. Just going to send the money back to him. Cash App, $Audit NASA. And that's about it. I think you can support on the thing. But I say that because the actual organization does require some funding. We have like a bunch of stuff that I've already paid like a lot of money out of pocket for. Patty Smith, thank you for the $10 super chat. Where is the chat? There it is. Genuinely curious, how do you explain high pressure in weather systems? They do not have a container around them. What? They're in the process of seeking equilibrium though. High pressure in weather systems that are actually migrating towards the like the lower pressure. That like weather systems prove the point, which is that without some type of like something containing them, they migrate towards the other system to seek equilibrium. I get paid at the end of the month. Nice, Charlie. Thank you for the $5 super chat. Get paid at the end of the month. Cool, bro. Awesome stream as always. Thank you. I missed the stream. I went really fast towards the end. There's a heads up. Hey, Liv, were you saying that I was basically like the anti-globe earthers' best friend at this point? What does that even mean? I just took all of their best explanations and just like absolutely slaughtered them. Cool. So go to auditnasa.com. If you want to support that, it's really cool because I can't, dude. I'm like, I need to get like some of what I spent on it back already. Like that we already have monthly expenses and it's just many hundreds of dollars being spent. I believe in it. I think it's super important. Therefore, I put tons of time, tons of energy, and tons of money into it because I felt led to do it. I felt like someone was supposed to do it. I also felt like Bob was really excited about it. I'm doing it in honor of him. I'm just doing it for the community to come together and actually do something, be professional, have actual real change, real action. Same idea with In the Field. So that's where we are. But so I did put my money where my mouth was, and I still am. I just had to pay for something else, another website with all the expenses of the website and so the website service, the domain, the emails, all that for Audit NASA. But it is what it is. Hopefully you guys
True
can
Earth
rally
Norseman
around.
Donated $20 through Super Chat. Heart. The whole fam damly. Heart.
Whole fam damly. Thank you for the $20 super chat. The True Earth Norseman. Thank you, man. Much love. Do you guys like the girl reading them off over $20? Do you guys like that? New patron. I have to figure out how to get it to say the person though. That's not cool. Doesn't even say the person. But hey, shout out to whoever signed up to be a patron. I think I can figure it out actually. How do I figure it out? Let's try that. I don't know. I don't see it. Whatever. I thought I'd be able to see the Patreon, but I don't. Why can't you pop out the mini feed? I'll figure everything out. All right, cool. I think that's about it. Like I said, so I'm gonna have the whole schedule on a calendar that's accessible, and hopefully I can embed it into that website. But I don't know if I can. But I'll have a whole website or a calendar where you guys can keep up with it. I'll also put up the weekly schedule. I'll flash it at the beginning and the end of the stream, so everyone can kind of have a reminder and know when to check in. So that's cool. Monday, 9 p.m. Eastern, relatively speaking. This is episode 3. Tuesday, I just do Audit NASA. Wednesday, Schooling Globers, I think episode 11. So Monday, relatively speaking, 9 p.m. Eastern. Tuesday, Audit NASA. Wednesday, Schooling the Globers, 9 p.m. Eastern. Thursday, Witsit Kicks It with. We have a guest lined up for this week, 9 p.m. Eastern. Witsit Kicks It on Thursdays. Friday, In the Field with whoever we're talking to in their respective field. So In the Field, Fridays, 9 p.m. Eastern. Saturday, Shabbat. If I ever do anything on Saturday, it'll be Saturday night after the sun goes down, but I like to rest on Shabbat, chill with the fam. Sunday, ideally, Witsit, biscuits and gravy. 9 or 10 a.m. yet to be decided. 1 to 2 hour show, just chill, watch some videos with you guys, laid back, opening up letters and stuff that's in the PO box. So there's really not much. I'll catch up on what's in there. If you guys want me to read the letters or whatever, just send to the PO box. I'll have to find out how to flash it back up there. I don't have the thing to show you guys what the PO box is right now, but it is what it is. Is what it is. 1714 PO Box 171433 Spartanburg, South Carolina 29301. Yep, 171433 Spartanburg, South Carolina 29301. And I'll read them on Witsit's Biscuits and Gravy Sunday mornings, and then of course I have Globebusters Sunday nights. And then I have a whole bunch of people asking me to come on shows at different times. I'm trying to line up all the different guests, trying to do all the Audit NASA stuff, blah, blah, blah. Trying to run all these different websites, trying to run things that you guys don't even know about, trying to launch other things so I can actually try to be able to pay my bills, because this is not doing it, I can assure you. None of this is. As of now, I'm just trusting the creator. No complaints here, but all I'm saying is that's the schedule. There will be occasional times where something comes up, or this guy really wants me to do a show. So on good principle, because that's my friend or whatever it is, I do that show. Some things may move around at times, but as you can tell, it's going to be consistently what the show is. So there you go. Plenty of different shows for you guys. I will still be taking debates. So I may occasionally not have a show on a certain day that I take a debate, but cool. There you go. A lot of people wanted me to be consistent. There you go. You got it. Any possibility of in-person speech? What you mean? I gave in-person speeches for 1.5 years around the whole U.S. Wish I could help right now, but I'm broke. You're good. You're good. Gotta trust bro. Don't burn out. If I feel like I'm burning out, then I won't do one of the shows. I gave myself Tuesday off from streaming, and I made Thursday optional, right? I went blank. So Thursdays are optional, meaning I'll have a show, I'll have someone on as a guest sometimes, just to chill, truthers typically, right? Just truthers. And sometimes I won't. That's it. If I feel like I need a break on Thursdays, I won't be doing one. Tuesdays, it's all Audit NASA. Thursdays, I don't have to do as much prepping. For this stream and for Wednesday, I have to read all these different PDFs and research all this stuff and put it all on a PowerPoint. So it's a lot, honestly, to bring 2 PowerPoints a week at least, but whatever. Word. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed. Your video of Dakota Faces was great. Yeah, at Rushmore. Took guts. Yeah. Yeah, that could have probably been more chill, though.
Always enjoy your streams. Keep up the hard work.
Thank you, Eric, for the $20 and the kind words. Much love, brother. Austin, not all messages go to StreamYard. I'm not sure what you mean. Not all messages go to StreamYard. This isn't StreamYard. I'm not sure what you're talking about. Even just a quick flat Earth explanation of neutrino images. You can't see neutrinos of the sun even at night with the ground in the way would be nice. This dude, so someone's asking me how you see neutrino images. You mean neutrinos that are, I think it has a mass, but we don't know if it has a mass and we can't really see it. We can just conceptualize what it's like and then use reverse reflectance imaging based on electromagnetic energy to claim that we formulate and isolate a certain area of it that we call a neutrino that supposedly can go up to the speed of light, if not faster, but then doesn't contract and doesn't expand with the mass that I don't know of mass, but it is mass. What? What does that even mean? Are you asking me how, you're asking me how the sun can, you're saying that the sun releases neutrinos through the entire Earth? And then first of all, that's your claim that I have to respond to. Secondly, if that was true, why couldn't that happen on a flat Earth? Why couldn't the sun create some type of electromagnetic interaction or some type of whatever you think's going on with neutrinos, which you guys don't know what neutrinos are. I've already researched that. You guys have no idea what neutrinos are. You absolutely have no idea what neutrinos are. I'm not trying to come at you. I'm just saying that that's pretty pseudoscientific. Whoever told you that or wherever you got that. But anyway, let's just say that it's legit. Why can't it happen on a flat Earth? Because it comes underneath our feet? What? What does that even mean, dude? The sun moves away and then it heats up the ground or has some type of interaction. It's pseudoscience at its finest, bro. I can't believe people would even bring that. I mean, that's the way I heard it before. But it's like the worst claim I've ever heard, maybe. I don't know. I've heard some really bad ones. I've heard that the sun should light up the entire Earth. I've heard that there would be no horizon on a flat Earth. I heard that if the Earth was flat, we'd be able to see across the entire thing. I heard that you would be able to see Polaris across the whole Earth. Nothing would ever go down below the horizon if the Earth was flat. I heard that, of course, you'd fall off if the Earth was flat. Yeah, that's the worst ones, probably. You're the man. We appreciate you very much. Thank you. I don't think you're of this pond. What pond are you really from, Austin? I'm from this pond. You don't think I'm from this pond? Hey, as far as I know, I'm from this pond, brother. Have you ever thought about the equator so-called calculations, 8 inches per mile squared? This is only possible in the horizontal, like drawing the curve on a canvas. Research this. Much respect. I'm not sure exactly what you're saying, but I'll have to think about what you're saying. All right, cool. Yeah, that's it. I got a few things I need to do for audit and acid before I go to sleep. Then I'm going to wake up and do that. I need to wake up early and work out. I missed working out today, so I'm salty. So I need to get out of here. I love you guys. Sorry for the stream starting and then ending. We'll just delete it. What do you think of the slow motion camera that took pictures of light in a Coca-Cola bottle? I've already talked about this. They have super sensitive slow motion cameras now. What it shows is that the light that we call light, it's exciting. It's becoming illuminated. What we call the travel or the speed of light is how quickly the light becomes perceivable. It's already there. So imagine a lake, and then I throw a rock in it, okay? And then the lake begins to undulate or be disturbed, and then I say, oh, look, there are ripples. If I took a slow motion of the ripples, okay, and I showed you slow motion of the ripples in the water in a video, and then I asked you, wait, are you saying that water didn't travel? I'd be like, yeah, that's ridiculous. Of course the water didn't travel across the lake. It was already there. It just has a disturbance in it. Same thing, that's what light is. Light is the disturbance in the background. So yeah, you're going to see it excite. It's going to be perceived to quote unquote travel, right? But it's not traveling. It's already there. It's just becoming excited. So you're going to see it excite. And so what we call the speed of light is actually the rate of perception of illumination. Specifically, that is caused by a rate of induction. It's the rate in which it's induced back into the background, not in the rate in which it travels from point to point. It's already there. It excites, right? It gets disturbed. There's a perturbation or disturbance of the ether. Let's just say an oscillation, a vibration. Let's say that. Let's say a disturbance, a vibration, a perturbation. Okay. Combine all these words together. It's in the middle of that. Really, perturbation is the best. Austin, you're the world's leading flat Earth expert and potentially know more about Earth than 99% of anyone in the history of mankind. You will be blessed. I don't know about that, but thank you for the kind words, brother. Oh, it's gonna read it. No, it's not. It's not over 20. Thank you, Ethan, for the kind words. Maybe too kind of words there, but I do appreciate it. And thank you for the $5 super chat, brother. Much love. I think I explained that to you though. So like, yeah, you're gonna see it. Say it's already there, and then it's become excited. Well, it has a source of what's exciting the background. Whether that's like, oh, there's a laser. I don't know where my laser is, but it's like, oh, there's the laser, or oh, there's the light bulb, right? That creates the disturbance. That's the rock that hits the pond. Okay, so you throw the rock in the pond. That's like turning on the laser. That's like turning on the light switch for the light bulb, right? That's throwing the rock, and the pebble hits the pond. That's like turning on the laser. Then you have the disturbance of the water. The lake's already there. Then you have the disturbance of it. It ripples. There's a disturbance in that pond. Okay, and so there's motion within that pond, and you see the ripples manifest. But the water's already there. Now you just see a different version of the water. Now it has what we call waves. But of course, waves aren't things. It's just the water moving or waving, right? So I can't hand you a wave, but I can wave my hand. Wave is a verb. You can't wave anything. You can only wave something. You can't hand waves. Waves aren't things in and of themselves. They're not objects. They're not nouns. Doesn't make any sense to think a wave is a noun. Wave's a type of movement. So there's that. If I stretched out a rope across the room and then I move the rope up and down real fast, or I just like shake it kind of like a rope like that, and it moves and it does this across the room, right? Like, and you turned to me and said, how long did it take the rope to get across the room? I'd be like, it was already across the room. If you took a really slow motion camera and took a video of that rope moving and you're like, see, it is moving across the room, but like, no, you see the rope's already there. You're just seeing it excited or disturbed or starting to move, or the waving of the rope that's already present. That's what the light is. Super slow motion is all you're doing is catching the rate of perceived illumination, meaning what's already there becomes excited and thus perceivable. It enters the spectrum of vibration that we can see. Thus, it becomes illuminated. We know this, by the way, right? We know that it's just like, it's really frustrating because it's like, oh, you can think that light travels in like this really remedial way, but I understand why my man would think that it travels, I guess, once it's been put in their head, because it's like you turn it on, then it's there. You can measure things with it. You see the light up the room, right? Like you can have delay in what you call light, but it's just you're having a delay in how quickly that background that's already present is excited, is illuminating. So hopefully, I don't know how else I can put it. But if you took a slow motion, what's already there is become illuminated. We know this because there's an entire spectrum of electromagnetic radiation, all the way from where they call radio waves, all the way up to all these different like gamma rays, right? You have a small little tiny spectrum of that we call visible light. And people just call it light. There's a little spectrum. It's all the same stuff though. It's all electromagnetic radiation. It's lower frequency to higher frequency. There's a little spectrum in the middle that our eyes are designed to see that little frequency, that little spectrum of frequency. We call that light. It's actually visible light. And visible light is a version of light. And light is, in fact, a version of the ether. Hopefully that makes sense. I mean, it's the only actual position that can explain observable phenomena as far as I know. So movements are moving inside what is stationary. Yeah, it's just the background medium being excited. Like if I have a pond and then I have a wave, like what's not understood about that analogy? That's what I don't get, I guess. Like what's not understood about that? You have taught me so much, dude. Oh, thank you. Patty the Flatty, much love. And thank you for the kind words and the support. Like, why do people understand that? Like, do you guys think that you can reach out and grab the wave out of the pool? Do you think that you can grab the wave and pull it out of the pool? Do you think the wave is something independent of the pool or the ocean or the lake? No, it's the movement of the lake. So there's a movement inside something that was stationary. Yes, of course. The water's just sitting there and then it becomes disturbed. Perturbation. That's what speaking is. That's why you vibrate, you create different vibrations, and then you're able to cause a disturbance in the air. There is no like emitting sound. You're not emitting sound waves. There aren't waves that carry sound. Waves aren't things. Okay? You're not emitting anything. You don't emit light. You don't emit sound. You don't emit radio waves. You cause excitations, disturbances, perturbations. That's what you do when you speak, right? It causes a perturbation in the air. That's why without air, you don't hear anything. You need the air to vibrate for you to hear the sound. Light is nothing more than a sound wave in the ether, just like Tesla said. All right. I love you guys. Seek and speak truth unequivocally. I don't know how the Indian stream is set up. Hopefully it's set up pretty good, but yeah. Seek and speak truth unequivocally. The weak find contentment in the consensus of ignorance. So who cares what other people think? What's popular is not always true, and what's true is rarely popular. So just speak the truth for yourself. If you want to support the stream, $WitsitGetsIt on Cash App. All the links in the description. You can go to Witsit.live. Stay up to date with the Telegram. You can also message me, Witsit or ProtonMail, or at Witsit on Telegram. Also sign up for Audit NASA, auditnasa.com. Until Wednesday, I'll catch up with you guys later. Peace.
That's for Israel. Wonder is it real? Rappers acting steady high, steady sipping pills. Glorify suicide so they get the deals. Big pharma set it up, had to flip the pills. Control the music industry until the scripts get filled. Geopolitically, yeah, we in the field. That's for Israel. Wonder is it real? Took the way you saw the world, then distorted it. Now you think you wanna rock that twirl somewhere orbiting. Theories disproportionate, the truth distorted quick with a forceful grip. They force a misinfo that we absorbing quick. Took the people's signature to mean extorted it. They forging it if news anchors informant to informing them. There's a surplus, but they tell us there are shortages. Credit economy mortgages, dollar that's supported with empty fortresses. But what's important is this: we courting ships, important gifts. Of course it is, but extortion is in accordance with an assortment list of foreign tricks. We ignoring which informant this, informant this. It looked like we were snoring tricked. Pedophilia and the government endorsing it. Yeah, eugenics is exactly what abortion is. You just vilify those insubordinate. Way to matrix engineer, that's unfortunate. Geopolitically, we in a field. That's for Israel. Wonder is it real? Rappers acting say they high, say they sip with pills. Glorify suicide so they get the deals. Big pharma set it up just to flip the pills. Control the music industry until the scripts get filled. Geopolitically, yeah, we in a field. That's for Israel. Wonder is it real?